Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. If my voice sounds a little strained, it was because, in part, I did a lot of talking last week over the weekend at our Texas Faithfest event, so would love to give you some insight and recap of that. So much to talk about. Continue to check out our social media channels, our email, and all that kind of stuff, because we're going to be putting out sort of highlights, key moments, all that kind of stuff from our event. But right after that event, I was talking and all kinds of stuff all weekend, and then I went to the University of Texas football game where I just couldn't help myself but to get a little bit excited about that, and certainly excited to see the Longhorns at number one the following day in the country with college football. And we do talk about faith, family, and football sometimes on this show, even though this isn't a sports show. We talk about the issues of faith, family, and freedom in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media. But look, I'll tell you what, the football issue was on display at our event because Coach Joe Kennedy was there and a lot of other great people. We did not really miss a beat, sadly. We took about half the day off on Monday, but a lot to do this week. Some things happening at the state capitol, some things happening on the election front that we'll want to cover today. Our team is over at the Capitol right now, testifying on some important issues as we get ready for the legislative session that happens in January. But before we move ahead too quickly, we do want to talk a little bit about some amazing things that happened over the weekend and some things that maybe we didn't get to talk about as much because we were off-site over at the event at Great Hills Baptist Church. One of the great experiences we had was with Chris Salcedo and Newsmax and KSEV that were broadcasting live for the event. We tried to get it done last year, just didn't have the timing right. So this year we sort of moved mountains to make it happen. And, you know, what a wonderful thing that did happen and that we pulled it off. And we're so excited about that and added a new element, but also, I think, started a new friendship. All right, so Chris Salcedo is going to be our guest today on the Texas Values Report. He is a veteran television and radio broadcaster. He is widely known as America's liberty-loving Latino. He does live in the state of Texas, but is from California. We discussed that a little bit when he was on site, and I gave him a really cool koozie. I'll let him talk about that in just a second. But he's the director of the Conservative Hispanic Society. You can also hear him on the radio in the Houston area, even though he typically is in the Dallas area when he's doing this 700 KSEV, a station owned by our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick. And we found out we have a couple of things in common as we got to spend some time together. Chris, welcome to the Texas Values Report.
Jonathan, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm also always learning, right? I'm not, I'm a lawyer. That's my background and an advocate and all this stuff, but I do a weekly radio show and podcast. I'm always trying to learn. I mentioned to you when you were at the event that a lot of my upbringing, my parents weren't involved in politics or some of the things I do now, but my dad listened to Rush Limbaugh, right? That was sort of our quality time together when I was in the car or the van with my dad, helping him with his work or whatever, and being his sidekick, but he was always listening to Rush Limbaugh, so I've always been a big fan of talk radio, and you're right there, continuing sort of that legacy and tradition of the importance, even though there are a lot of different formats. So anyway, it was great to meet you in person over the weekend, and I'm so excited about the work you're doing, but also getting to have a better sense of all that you do and your place in this type of work. What about you? What were your impressions of the event? And, did you get to catch your breath a little bit when you got home?
Well, first off, yes, I did catch my breath, but I spoke to you and spoke to many of the event organizers, and I wasn't quite ready for the emotional experience that I go to speeches all the time. I do remote broadcasts whenever I possibly can. It's just part of what I do. It is rare that I show up to an event where I have an experience. And for whatever reason, maybe it was what was going on around the country, what was going on in the state of Texas, I had an experience at your event, which was, I don't want to oversell it by saying it was, transformational, but I do want to say it impacted me in such a way to know and understand and to reinforce. It's one thing to suspect it. It's one thing to have it confirmed for you. And when I showed up at Faithfest, I had it confirmed to me that I wasn't alone. Yeah. And that the things that I've been observing, the things that I've been seeing, the things that trouble me, trouble you, trouble a whole lot of people, a whole lot of Texans. And it was, and to have a whole organization dedicated to the fight that I'm in, I didn't feel so alone. So it was a very enriching experience for me, and I told you and your staff as much.
Well, listen, I appreciate you, really being comfortable to express that as well, right? I mean, sometimes we have those experiences, but we're like processing them, and we almost don't want to admit, that, maybe we had another idea, or to your point, like, wow, there's a group out there that is right there in what I do, because, we want to believe there are a lot of groups and people that share our values, surely, right? I'm not the only one, but we can oftentimes feel that way. And obviously in the work that you do, I'm sure you meet a lot of people that are like-minded, but, there might not be a specific connection that you had with a group. And it's interesting you say that, though, about your experience, because the team will, verify this. And if you look on social media and other formats leading up to the event, I was telling people, come to this event because it could change your life. And I didn't just make that up. I went to an event like ours 20 years ago when I was getting involved in some of this work, or wanting to, and I had an experience like that I didn't expect. I was encouraged by, but I went to this event and wanted to learn more. And I remember leaving the event going, something's different, and I'm even more dedicated to this kind of thing. And so my belief is that can happen, but I want to create an opportunity for that experience. But I will also admit something to you. When I thought about that, I didn't think about it in the context of maybe people that are going to be in your role and other media outlets and so on at the event. I'm thinking of the people that sort of bought a ticket to attend. And so I sort of limited myself. And so when you said that, though, I was like, oh my gosh, it could come from any angle with the people that are there. And I think a part of it is that when you have that collective opportunity, when people are together and you hear a lot of those things happening, the topics we covered, are huge, right? And they're happening right now. And then, the fact of the matter was, we had just been hearing about a second assassination attempt on President Trump, which is, it's hard for it to not make you a little bit emotional, or just, to feel things a little bit more, because, that could have happened again. He could have lost his life. It was, happening during that time. And it brings into focus, and I'm going to work on not talking as much, because you're a better talker than I am. It brings a little bit more in focus why we're there and why we care about these issues.
I've got to be honest, and this is probably going to pull the curtain back.
Yeah.
Whether it be Rush Limbaugh, the great Rush Limbaugh, of which I am a student of the Limbaugh Institute of Advanced Conservative Studies, with, I would like to think, talent on loan from God, as it was with him, that it's Rush sitting in a studio with some engineers. It's me sitting in a studio with some engineers, whether it be on the radio show or whether it be on the television show with a crew and with a production crew. So where we may speak to hundreds of thousands of Americans every single day, and we may get the emails, the personal connection that you feel at a Trump rally, for example, when you show up and 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 folks are showing up to see President Trump, people who think just like you, who see the problems that you see, it's just a different experience. And for those who think that, those of us in media, hey, you speak to hundreds of thousands of people every day. Well, yes, but at the end of the day, it's just us, a microphone, and a camera. And really, when you get out in amongst the folks, that's when it really starts to hit home. Hey, I'm not alone. I'm not sitting in a studio in a bubble. So when you start talking about attempts on the president's life, which, by the way, in Arizona, just last night, 20 people, at least 20 people were reporting some sort of ailment, and they were all seated around the area in which President Trump came into the auditorium. And doctors are a little flummoxed as to how some of these people are exhibiting what they would call chemical burns.
Wow. On
some of these people. So many are speculating now, is this a third attempt on President Trump's life? We don't know. But we're waiting for more facts to come out. But all of that said, when we were confronted by the fact that we want to go out, we want to come together, we want to show our support for a candidate, come together as pro-American conservatives, somebody's taking that personally, and they don't want it.
Yeah.
And they're willing to shoot, they're willing to kill to prevent that to happen. That really hits home, and it was I thought it reinforced the need for all of us to come together, as was done at Faithfest, to reaffirm who we are as a people, who we really serve in the end, and the fact there is evil in the world that deserves opposition.
No, there's no doubt. And, I will tell you, one of the highlights of our event, one of the key highlights, and I'd put that in the top 3, if not maybe number 1, is your presence at Texas Faith Fest, Newsmax presence at the Texas Faith Fest, together with you, and obviously KSEV 700, because that's sort of the whole package that you bring to the table. And there's a song from many years ago that says, it was part of the lyrics, nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd, right? And so as people sort of crowded around, this studio space that we created for you there on the floor in the Great Hall of Great Hills Baptist Church, they're right just sort of on the back end of where the main area was where people were speaking, the more that they would see you and then other people around and other people around, and certainly when Michael Knowles showed up and then you guys had a conversation together, a lot of young people, right? But that's part of it, right? What you're talking about, that experience of it being in person, right? And it's exciting. Imagine if you were broadcasting your radio show and you're sitting next to Rush Limbaugh or someone like that in your studio, you would, and you're at a place where a lot of people could pay attention, they would do that. They'd probably congregate around you. And I know you've probably had that experience in other events, but it's magnetic, it's electric, it's human, right? It's an experience that we have. And so we try to create an opportunity that, and, we did a lot of different things to make it possible. And I'm so grateful that everything worked out well. And, obviously you brought your A game, and I really enjoyed being a part of that. Let's step back though a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Newsmax, because that's part of the reason why we reached out, because we could also see from our vantage point the impact that network is making, the intentionality of, hey, this space is not being filled, or there's some concern or whatever, we need this type of outlet. And, some news out this week that's very encouraging about the role that y'all are playing. Talk to us a little bit about your connection with that network and how that y'all figured out something important that viewers and listeners are looking for.
Well, let's take a step back. For 20 plus years, it was the Karl Rove Never Trump network that was dominant in the conservative space. The people over at Fox, when they were under old management, they were able to create a network that didn't treat Republicans and conservatives like pariahs. They actually had conservative opinion represented, but their news department gave both sides of the equation an equal chance to come and speak. That's how they were able to dominate that space. Now, since the management has changed and the editorial perspective has also changed, also courtesy of boycotts by advertisers who have gone left-wing and anti-free speech and anti-conservative and anti-freedom, as they have changed, that teed up an ascendancy for somebody to take over that mantle of fair and balanced. That the Karl Rove Never Trump network abandoned that branding of fair and balanced. They no longer use it because they no longer believe in it. And so when the 2020 election came along and you had leftist devotees like Chris Wallace and others doing their utmost to pave the way to usher President Trump out the door and to normalize an extremist who ended up, at the time, to be fair to them, they didn't realize how much of a left-wing extremist he would be, Beijing Biden. But they tried to normalize a man who was obviously a few burritos short of a combination plate. And they tried to say, don't pay attention to all of that. Orange man bad. And after what transpired on election night, Newsmax was the recipient of a lot of missteps of the Karl Rove Never Trump network, and almost overnight. And some of it was to our detriment because we grew so fast. It was really, really hard to keep track with the audience growth and keep up with the audience growth. We've normalized now, and I think we're in a good spot. But remember, Newsmax meteoric rise happened on that fateful night on election 2020. And we've managed to parlay that into ever-increasing audience. Newsmax is now the 4th largest cable news network in the United States. and the fourth most watched. And we've built that by, again, the old formula that Fox had abandoned, which is don't treat conservatives like pariahs. Have some conservative opinion. If a Democrat was brave enough to come on and accept questions from me, they would be welcome on my program.
Yeah.
My audience might not like it, but they would be welcome, and I would ask them some tough questions, like, for example, to Kamala Harris. Are Americans better off than they were 4 years ago? She refuses to answer that question because she knows the answer.
Well,
she says,
she would answer with, I grew up in a middle class
family. Exactly.
Okay, so I'm not trying to slow you down too much, but you're saying all these great things. I want to make sure, and I want to encourage people that are watching this on Facebook to share this live feed to your page, to your groups, because we're having a very important conversation, and I want more people to be a part of it. But to your point, if you'd be open to a Democrat coming on, but you have an idea of sort of what they would say or what she would say or how they might dodge some questions.
Well, no Democrat. And when Joe Biden assumed the Oval Office, we invited him. He has never been brave enough to come in and take questions from your liberty-loving Latino. As a matter of fact, no elected Democrat will agree to come on to Newsmax and take questions from your liberty-loving Latino. And now, if that were the case on the flip side, let's say there was a loudmouth leftist Latino on one of these networks, which they have plenty on one of these so-called networks, and they wanted to ask a question of a Republican, but the Republican refused to go on to their program. What would be the first immediate response from the left-wing press? It would be, oh, the Republican is say it with me, racist, right? But when Democrats don't want to come on and talk to a conservative Latino, well, that's just par for the course. I'm tired of accepting the double standard, and the Democrat Party writ large are cowardly for not being able to speak to their opposition. They refuse to speak to their opposition. So I have to ask, why should they be in elected office?
Well, look, you make a good point. And if you want to watch Chris's show, Chris Salcedo, he's on Newsmax from 3 to 4 Central, 4 to 5 Eastern time. He's on KSAV every day. That's 700. I'm sure you can get it online, but if you're listening in the greater Houston area, what time is your show on KSAV every day?
It is at 8 o'clock Eastern until 10 Eastern.
That's what I thought. It was in the morning.
And it's live streamed on Rumble and on Getter and on X. Yeah, you can pick it up there. So there's no excuse. Folks around the country can find us, and many of them have, and on Newsmax 2 as well. Newsmax 2 is another division of Newsmax.
Well, one of the highlights of our event over the weekend, so Chris Salcedo, who is on Newsmax as one of their personalities and person that interviews people, gives news commentary, also on KSEV 700 in the Houston area. They broadcasted live from the Texas Faithfest over the weekend, Friday and Saturday, Texas Values big annual education and policy event. And I love it because I was sitting in sort of the hot seat, right? You and I were doing an interview, and y'all had a sort of 2-camera or 3-camera shot where they were showing Michael Knowles speaking live at our event, and also the other sort of window was me speaking with you. I was like, how much fun is this? How cool is this? And again, trying to create those opportunities to reach more people, give you an opportunity for more people to know about your show and your involvement and your relevance in this equation, but also bringing y'all some quality content. Here's Michael Knowles speaking in Texas on relevant issues and so on. But I want to mention something to you real quick, though. You might find entertaining. Is it Don Lemon? I'm trying to remember, that was on CNN for a while, right? He was one of their big anchors. Is that
Don? Yeah, we call him Don Lime because every New Year's he would get soused on tequila. Every single New Year's on air, he would be drinking on air and get really, really drunk. So we call him Don Lime. But yes, he was a former personality on CNN.
Okay, and the reason I mention that, because to your point, right, I will go on other shows that maybe aren't, I think, is going to be friendly, even though it can be a little treacherous. So this was, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. I was on CNN live with him debating like state board of education issues. There was some racial element they tried to pull me into, right, which always makes it inconvenient as a Hispanic because they think they've got me pegged or whatever, and then I flipped the tables on them. But I'll happen to pull that footage at some point. But I had an interview with him for many years ago, and they don't ask, it's been a long time since they asked me to come on, but I'm like, hey, you want to ask me to come on? Give me an opportunity. And I'll do that. And so I do think that's important. And I'm glad to hear that you, at least the invitation's there, the expectation that people are actually going to accept it is another thing. But yeah, let them make their point. So we were talking about this. Go ahead.
Jonathan, about that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that your liberty-loving Latino here doesn't get invited onto mainstream media? Why do you think somebody that with my surname, with my skin tone, why do you think somebody like me doesn't get invited to give a perspective from, by the way, millions and millions and millions of Hispanics in this country that are not represented in the mainstream press? Why do you think they want nothing to do with me? Because I destroy a narrative they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time putting out there, that if you're a person of color in the United States of America, you're naturally a socialist and a Marxist and a Democrat. And I destroy that narrative. And not only that, I give voice to individuals who don't believe in that. And that's something the biased press cannot allow. So that's why you don't see me on left-wing broadcasts, because they can't take the chance that their narrative be destroyed.
No, I think you're absolutely right, sadly. And I've experienced that as well, right? And, it's inconvenient. They want people to think that, people like you and I, we don't exist. That's a myth, that there's no one, and if we dare have an opportunity or platform, there's sometimes they'll sort of bend over backwards or try different ways to sort of shield people from that or keep us out of the equation or the conversation. And you've busted through that, right? With the benefits of technology, obviously, you stay very informed. You're not afraid to call balls and strikes, if you will. You're not afraid to tell it like it is without having, to answer to people that don't understand how important it is for someone to say what a lot of people agree with. We know that Trump does that. A lot of other great speakers do that. I mean, Tucker Carlson, still not with Fox anymore, but certainly getting a lot of interest, and a lot of people still care a lot about what he says. All right, let's talk about a couple issues. We touched on the assassination attempt, just substantively, not to discount the content we were just talking about, because it is very important. But the failed assassination attempt, we talked about, is there a third one, right? But that was all happening, and you're sort of seeing how people were reacting. And I went on Victory News, I think on Monday, and, I'm like, you start to feel like, it's going to happen at some point if we don't get them even more serious about this. The second attempt, to your point about were some people experiencing things at the rally because there's some type of, toxic things going on or some type of chemical warfare that people are engaging in. But I can't remember seeing this before, and I wasn't born during that time. I was born in 73. I'm thinking about 1968, right? Martin Luther King Jr., Bobby Kennedy, like, good Lord, are we going to get more serious about this? Yeah, JFK.
Well, Trump said at a rally the other day, only consequential presidents get shot at. To which, I couldn't believe he said it. I was like, wait a minute. Let me think critically about this. Lincoln, Roosevelt, Kennedy, Reagan. Yeah. When you think about it, now what do all these cats have in common? All these people tried to disrupt the status quo, the power that had been siphoned exclusively for the benefit of those who circled DC like vultures. That they were trying to dismantle that system that had forgotten the American people. Thus, they earned bullets. So I think as flip as some wanted to assign President Trump's words, I don't think it was flip at all. I think it was very instructive as to why we're seeing this unprecedented attacks on this man, whether it be lawfare, whether it be physical assassination attempts, the lengths to which the worldwide left and their collaborators in the Democrat Party, and let's be fair, the Republican Party as well, here in the United States, to keep our people under government control. Yeah. The lengths they will go to is frightening. And to where once trusted institutions are no longer trusted, this is something that they have done. This is something that we're finding out, and the distrust we have for them is earned. And that's why I believe guys like Trump are such a threat to them.
No, look, and here he hasn't changed his approach, right? He's still doing the rallies, a big rally, as you said last night. Others, I mean, he's got to stay true to who he is. And it's also a way of saying, look, he understands the magnitude of the moment. He always has, but even more so now. And this is, I think, probably drawing more people to those events, even though people are, I mean, they're obviously, they're trying to assassinate him because they're trying to change the election outcome because, they see the writing on the wall, or they're just, they're so concerned. All right, we just got to have a minute or so left. And I want to touch on Speaker of the House issue because I know you do a lot of work nationally, but you're also very engaged at the state level. On Saturday, a member of your team was there, Chris X, but I know you weren't a part of some of that coverage. We had a great panel on Saturday on Speaker of the House. We had Shelby Slauson, Representative Tom Oliverson, and James Frank. Since then, John Smithy's gotten in the race, Anna Maria Ramos, a Democrat. What do you think's going on there? Because we had a great panel, but and I asked the question, is it really over for Dade Phelan? And really the question now, who's going to be the next speaker? What are your thoughts on how that issue has just continued to move in a direction away from Dade Phelan?
Well, courtesy of Joe Strauss and courtesy of Dennis Bonnen and what I call the coup that they had that Strauss and his cabal had undertaken, the Gang of 11 coup. Charlie Guerin is the only remaining individual that was part of that coup. Courtesy of that, the Democrat Party has been able to run a scam on the people of Texas for the last 20 years or so. And the scam is this, that these individuals who would normally be Democrats in a Texas that was blue, they switched parties so they could still remain in power and keep Democrats in the game under the name of the Republican banner. So it took about 20 years to dismantle this deception that has shown that about 10 or 12 bought off, soulless, gutless, coreless Republicans have been bought off by a speaker, whether it be Bonnen, whether it be Strauss, or whether it be Phelan. And all the Democrats have gotten together to elect the speaker. And the threat was made to all the rest of the Republicans who were in the majority. You either get in line or none of your bills will see the light of day. And that was enough to keep up the illusion that Republicans were in the majority in the House. That illusion is gone. With the impeachment of Ken Paxton, people started looking into what the heck is going on in the Texas House. And can you imagine how Strauss and Bonnen feel about Dade Phelan? He's so much of a boob, so incompetent, he couldn't keep up the con anymore. Well. So all the Democrats, this is why you have a Democrat joining in, Jonathan, as speaker. They know he can't deliver for them anymore.
Yeah.
The Democrats know he's not their guy. He's damaged goods. He's damaged Texas, and everybody knows it now.
No, look, so, I think all three of the Speaker of the House candidates that were on that panel said, it's over for Phelan. And now it's just a matter of who Republicans are going to elect. And we're going to post that later, the full, well, at least the last segment of it. We're going to work on getting more of that footage up because we had a record crowd at this event, but a lot of people are watching online, and a lot of people are, asking us for, I didn't get to go. What did he say? Whatever. So we're going to keep pushing that information out. But yeah, look, I mean, and then, a lot of it is just at some point, the failure of leadership is going to have its consequences one way or another. And I think we're seeing that.
Wait. It's not a failure. Jonathan, it's not a failure. It is a deception.
Yeah.
Those who have been in the leadership in the House for the last 20 years. I mean, this goes to Dustin Burrows, Charlie Guerin, this cabal who are really Democrats, who really swing left, who have been responsible for keeping Democrats in the game despite everything that they on their Texas party and their national party has been doing to us. It has been a deception. They have done Democrats bidding under the Republican banner, and it all comes to an end when Speaker Dade Phelan is shown the door.
Well, look, and I'm just so excited and optimistic about what it's going to look like in the Texas House when the Republicans vote to not have Democrat chairs. There's a lot of legislation that we've tried to work on that's been dead because of that one aspect. Okay, we're out of time, but I want to formally say thank you so much to Chris Salcedo for coming on the show today, for broadcasting live from our Texas Faithfest. over the weekend. The invitation is going to already be sent out today for next year, because we definitely want to have you back and have Newsmax there and continue the friendship and partnership. But look, anything we can do, too, to get the message out that you're doing and so on, let us know. You do a fantastic job. It was great to meet you in person. I want to see you use that koozie, by the way. All right,
yes.
That I gave you.
Don't California, as somebody who escaped the People's Republic of California, don't California my Texas. Folks, keep up with me at ChrisSalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com, and that's where you find out what I'm up to.
All right, great. Chris Salcedo's been our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Thanks, Chris. Okay, I went over time a little bit, but for good reason. Okay, the guy does a great job. He's on top of the issues. He tells it like it is, and it's refreshing. All right, so check out his stuff, social media, all his contacts, and stay up to date with what he's doing. We had a tremendous event. We've got a new event coming up, though, on October 15th. Prestonwood has a candidate forum. That's up in the North Texas area. We are one of their co-sponsor for the event. The Texas Children's Hospital CEO, Mark Wallace, he resigned. This is the hospital that's in the middle of the scandal of covering up the fact that they were doing gender transition procedures and puberty blockers on kids. There's an allegation they're engaged in Medicaid fraud. As a matter of fact, Vanessa Sivage, the nurse that's a whistleblower, is testifying about that today at the Texas Capitol. Our team is over there, too, testifying on some pro-life issues, Senate Bill 24, and a lot of other great stuff. And I mentioned other people have joined the Texas Speaker of the House race. This issue is just continuing to get hotter. We're right in the middle of it. Stay engaged with our work. Get ready to vote in November and the legislative session in January. You see value in our work, make a donation right now at txvalues.org. That's how together we'll protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.